we're going to start history by doing the oceans and the continents. So as I point to them, just tell me what they are.
North America.
South
Europe.
Okay, some of you are used to me going in a certain order. North America, South America. I'm not going to do that all the time. So you need to be watching what I'm doing. Do you understand?
North America. Europe. Africa. South America. Asia. Australia. Antarctica.
Now the oceans.
Indian Ocean. Southern Ocean. Atlantic Ocean. Pacific Ocean.
Pacific Ocean.
Arctic.
This is the Arctic Ocean, up at the top of the world. Remember, the top of the globe would be where the Arctic Ocean is. So this is the Pacific Ocean, but up here is
Arctic.
If I point here,
Arctic. Pacific.
yes, because as a globe, this side and this side would meet together. So this is Pacific Ocean, and this is still Pacific Ocean, right? And this is again
Indian
Very good. Remember, 7 continents, 5 oceans. You will need to know them for your test next week. Not tomorrow, but next Wednesday. You have your first test, and they will be on that test. Yes?
What's the ocean that we usually go to?
Atlantic, because this is the United States, and you go to Ocean City, that would be your Atlantic Ocean. Unless you're in the Bay part. Because there is the Chesapeake Bay. When you're over that way, you can go to the Bay side, I think. But I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably go all the way to the Atlantic side.
Yeah.
All right, now we also want to talk about the regions of the United States. All right, so when we after we finish this next test, we will be going on to different sections. And we'll start with this section right here, which is the
Northeast. Southeast. Midwest. Southwest. West.
And remember, Alaska and Hawaii are included in this West. When we learn the West, we will learn Alaska and Hawaii. But we will look at another map that just has these states on it, so we can learn every single state that is in the Northeast. All right, the other thing we've been looking at is landforms, and I'm going to turn it around. I want to see if you can remember the names of them without seeing the names of them. All right, so this is a
Volcano. Mountain. Hill. Valley. River. Waterfall. Oasis. Desert. Plain.
very good.
Island. Marsh. Peninsula.
Peninsula.
Gorge.
Very good. I don't think I skipped any, so I think I got them all. Excellent. You guys did a great job on that. You won't have that on a test till way at the end of the year. All right, let's begin on page 40 now. All right. And we were talking about the Pilgrims. We were talking specifically about Miles Standish, who was the leader of the Pilgrims. So everybody, page 40, middle of the page where it says Miles Standish leads the Pilgrims. A short, red-headed man watched the waves lap against the side of the Mayflower. He was daydreaming, thinking back to when the Queen of England sent him, an English soldier, to Leiden, Holland. In Leiden, he had heard of a group of people who had left England. Who are these people? Miles Standish asked. Some call them separatists. Some call them pilgrims, a Dutchman answered. Why did they come here to Leiden? They want freedom to worship God in their own way, but they are not happy here, sighed the Dutchman. Why not? Asked Mr. Standish. Here in Holland, they are free to worship God in their own way. Their children are forgetting their English ways. They are beginning to speak Dutch like our children. Why, these separatists are so brave, they dare to think of sailing all the way to America. So they left England and went to Holland, Leiden, Holland, for freedom to worship God the way they chose, the way they felt was right according to the Bible. But once they got there, their children are forgetting the English ways. They're even starting to speak Dutch instead of English. All right, top of the next page. I would like to meet these separatists. I admire brave people. In this way, Miles Standish was introduced to the leaders of the separatist group. They became very good friends indeed, although he never became part of the separatist church. Soon the separatist plans became definite. They would sail for America, where their children would hear nothing but English and where they could build their own church in freedom. But the separatists had many questions to answer. What about the Indians? Who would protect them? Surely they would need someone to lead them, but who? Miles Standish may be a small man, but I don't know of any giant who would be braver, one man suggested. He is an excellent soldier. He may not be a separatist, but he would do his best to protect us, replied another man. At last, they all agreed. Miles Standish should be their military leader. Along with his wife Rose, Mr. Standish and the group of pilgrims set sail for America on board a ship named the Mayflower. Alright. The pilgrims reach America. The days grew colder and stormier in November after 66 long days at sea. So guys, that's over 2 months. 2 months long that they've been on the Mayflower. In November, after 66 long days at sea, the pilgrims finally saw land. The place was Cape Cod, but they could not settle there. Cape Cod did not have fresh drinking water or a good harbor for ships to sail in and out. Since the pilgrims were starting their own settlement, they needed to write laws to govern themselves. Oh, by the way, turn the page, because I just turned the page. We're on page 42 now, and if you were following along, you would have known that. I'm going to start over since most of you didn't turn the page when I did. Since the pilgrims were starting their own settlement, they needed to write laws to govern themselves. It was the first form of self-government in the New World. They declared their allegiance to England and wrote fair and equal laws. This document, called the Mayflower Compact, was signed by all 41 of the adult men. For the next 5 weeks, Miles Standish led a group of men in search of a good place to build homes. Everyone else waited on board the Mayflower. The trips the men made were hard. The weather was so cold that at times their clothes froze to their skin. Because remember, it's already November when they landed, so it's already starting to get cold weather. And I lost my place. Many times they lost their way. They met unfriendly Indians who shot arrows at them. Finally, in December of 1620, they found a good harbor for ships. Not far away was fresh drinking water. They decided that this was a good place to settle, and they named it Plymouth. All right, stop there for a moment because I want to point out on the map. All right. And since I don't have the New England map out, we're going to use my pull-down map. So if you would look, remember whose map did they use to come?
John Smith.
Yeah, they used John Smith. Remember John Smith, after he got hurt and went back to England, when he came back, he didn't go back to Jamestown. He went and made a map of the New England coast. All right, so right here, this is Massachusetts. And you guys see how Massachusetts comes around and almost looks like it makes a hook? All right, so when they came across, they ended up right here. This is called Cape Cod. But do you guys see how narrow it is?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a good place to be. It's right here on the Atlantic, so the waters would be very rough. But if you go around and come into this little inside the hook, wouldn't that be a safe harbor?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what they did. But did they know that? Did they know that this was really narrow right here?
No.
Not really. I mean, John Smith would have made a map, but back then were maps super accurate? No. So after the men came and got on shore, they were able to find out this. They were able to find, hey, if we just bring our ship around and into here, then it will be much safer harbor, and there are more places to build lands. So this is called Cape Cod, but where they came to was called Plymouth. Okay? So that's where they settled. They did not settle at Cape Cod. It was the first place they came to, but it wasn't a good place. There was no fresh drinking water and not a place to build houses. So they went on around into the harbor, and they settled in what's called what? Plymouth. Alright, right at the middle of the page, I'm going to keep reading. As soon as the Mayflower sailed into Plymouth Harbor, all the men began to work. Miles Standish knew that the people needed protection against any possible Indian enemies. First, they built a fort, which would also be a house for everyone until there was time for each family to build a separate home. It was not long until the fort became a hospital. The Pilgrims were not used to such cold weather. Without warm houses, warm clothes, and enough food to keep them strong, many Pilgrims became sick. Many died, including Rose Standish. So Miles Standish's wife died that first winter. Mr. Standish did not allow his sadness to keep him from his work. He knew he needed to help the others. There was always, top of the next page, don't turn it, but look at the top of the next page. There was always plenty to do. At times, there were only 6 or 7 pilgrims strong enough to help the others who were sick. Miles Standish, the soldier, was not ashamed to become cook and nurse for his friends. He even washed clothes for them. It is not surprising that the Pilgrims learned to love and trust this gentle but brave soldier. In February, the Pilgrims named Miles Standish captain of the New Plymouth Colony. All right, stop and think. When Miles Standish saw one of the Pilgrims in need, he helped him. He always seemed to ask himself, what can I do to help? No job was too big or too small. The next time you see something that needs to be done or someone who needs help, ask yourself, what can I do to help? Helping someone not only makes that person happy, it makes you happy too. And let's read out loud together that poem, Others, by Charles D. Meigs. Lord, help me live from day to day in such a self-forgetful way that even when I kneel to pray, my prayer shall be for others. Spring comes at last. By the time the warmth of springtime came, half of the Pilgrims had died. Yet not one person wanted to return on the Mayflower when it sailed back to England. As Captain Standish gave orders, the people worked to build their homes. They started in early spring to be ready for the next winter. Turn the page. The Pilgrims meet the Indians. One day, while everyone was hard at work, someone shouted, "Indians!" Captain Standish ordered every man to get his gun and be ready to fight. How surprised everyone must have been when one lone Indian walked up to them and said, "Welcome, Englishmen." In English, he said that. The Native American, whose name was Samoset, explained that English fishermen had taught him some English words a few years before. To everyone's delight, this friendship also led to a friendship with most of the tribes in the area. To be sure, there were still some unfriendly Indians. At first, they may have laughed and made fun of the Pilgrim's short little captain with red hair. Such a little man cannot be very brave. So Miles Standish was short for a man. The Native Americans soon found out how brave Captain Standish was when one Indian tried to kill him with a knife. Captain Standish quickly grabbed the knife and stopped him. From then on, Captain Standish had the respect of nearly every Native American, friend or enemy. They found out that a person's size does not measure how brave he is. Top of the next page. For many years, Captain Standish kept his watchful eye on the Plymouth colony. His fearlessness saved Plymouth from the attacks of unfriendly Indians. He led the army at Plymouth for over 30 years. In 1656, Miles Standish died, but the memory of his strength and gentleness lived on in the hearts of the people who knew him. All right, comprehension check. Why did the separatists want to leave Holland? Alice?
Because their children was starting to speak Dutch.
Yeah, and they were forgetting what?
To speak English.
And the English
Ways.
The English ways. They were forgetting the English ways. Whom did the Pilgrims choose to be their military leader?
Miles Standish.
Miles Standish. Very good. What was the first form of self-government in the New World? What was it called?
Plymouth.
No, that's where they landed, not their government. They called their government what? Nobody can remember? I want you to look on page 42 and find the answer. The first form of self-government in the New World. Brantley?
Mayflower.
Yes, the Mayflower Compact. So guys, when I ask you what was the first form of self-government in the New World, Mayflower
Compact.
Compact. Remember, it was a set of laws or rules that they were to follow, and all the men had to sign it. 2 ways Captain Standish helped the Pilgrims. There's lots of them, so you can tell me one. Yeah.
Protect them from unfriendly Indians.
Yes, he protected them from unfriendly Indians.
He washed their clothes for them.
When they were all sick, he was washing clothes. What else was he doing when they were sick?
He protected them from the Indians.
Okay, she just said that, hon. We all said that. That was the first one that was said. Elise said that one.
He became like a doctor.
Okay, a nurse. We'll go with nurse. So he was their nurse. He washed their clothes and he cooked for them. Very good. So he protected them from unfriendly Indians, and he helped nurse them. He cooked for them, and he even washed their clothes for the ones that were sick. All right, think back to John Smith and the colony at Jamestown. Remember? Those were the gentlemen. And let's compare the Pilgrims to the gentlemen. So why did the gentlemen come to Jamestown?
For great wealth.
For wealth. Is that why the Pilgrims were coming?
No.
No. There were 2 groups. One of them came for adventure, and one of them came for
Freedom.
what kind of freedom?
Religious.
Religious freedom. So the Pilgrims were made up of 2 groups, the separatists and the strangers. The strangers wanted adventure, not wealth, and the Pilgrims, the separatists, wanted religious freedom. So the separatists wanted religious freedom. I almost think I said that wrong. The separatists wanted religious freedom, and the strangers wanted adventure. So that was the difference between the gentlemen who were at Jamestown and the Pilgrims who were at Plymouth, right?